We're an all-volunteer organization. We also have volunteer committees and other volunteers that help us with the newsletter and our website. We do not take a stand or position on issues unless we survey the neighborhood and come to a conclusion from that. Tonight, we're going to have some of the ballot issues will be discussed, and Congress Park Neighbors is neutral. This is informational presentation. The meeting will be recorded. If at all possible, try to limit your questions to the chat, but I know sometimes people do just speak out. Our first presenter tonight is Gianna Lombardi. She's with Denver Water, and she is going to speak with us about the Denver Water Project at Congress Park. Hi, Gianna. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, you're welcome. Hi, everyone. My name is Gianna Lombardi, and I'm a Community Relations Specialist at Denver Water. I'm here to talk to you guys about the ASR project that's happening over at our Capitol Hill facility. And I also have my colleague Meg Trubee here with me, who's also on camera. So we're actually going to split up our time to talk about the ASR project and about the lead replacement project that's happening, just to give you guys an update since they're both relevant to where we're going to be. If you're okay, I'm just going to share my screen here with you guys real quick, help you guys get a better image here of what I'm going to be talking about. Most of the neighbors in this area, we did scope out about a half-mile radius around where our project is going to be over at Congress Park. Should have gotten a couple notices. The RNO also got notices about this project of aquifer storage and recovery. And for those of you who don't know, Denver Water is doing a study where we're drilling down about 1,800 feet down into the aquifers below Denver to study the feasibility of storing potable water underground as another means to store water during dry years, during droughts. And so we're exploring this area to see if we can store water underground. So that will entail us having about a 4 to 6 week 24/7 drilling period where our crews are going to be there drilling this one borehole down into the ground. So on this map here, I have a picture of exactly where the drilling is happening. It's right here at the alleyway of 10th in Detroit. The Denver Botanic Gardens is right here, the community garden. We have one of our reservoirs here. The project did start this Monday, and everything has been going well and smoothly. And again, we are expecting this to last about 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully getting done sooner than that. And I wanted to scroll up here and just show you guys a little bit about what exactly is on this facility and what we're doing. This blue border here is a sound wall, 16-foot sound wall that was required a part of our nighttime noise variance that we obtained through the city and county of Denver. To help keep the decibel levels from the noise of this project down.
Gianna, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you zoom in a little bit because the words on the page are very small?
Yeah, no problem.
That's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Meg. And so this drill rig actually is up here a little bit further to the north where we actually have staged. But this is about what it looks like behind the sound wall that's here. So I know that there's a lot of foot traffic that happens on this alleyway, especially going to the tennis courts. So you can't really see anything with the big sound wall that's there. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a better picture of what it actually is there with the drill rig and the equipment. And I wanted to keep my time short of exactly talking about the ASR, and I wanted to leave time for questions in case any of the neighbors had questions, anything that you'd like to ask about ASR in relation, and then I'll hand it over to Meg to talk about the lead service replacement project. Does anybody have any lead or ASR related questions for me?
Hi, this is...
I've got a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
They did the same drilling at the lot that, oh my gosh, National Jewish owns. What did you come up, what type of study results did you get from that drilling as well?
I don't have those study results right on hand or in my mind at the moment that I can share with you, but I'm happy to give you my email, and that's something that we could follow up outside of this for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Gianna. This is Judith, and you and I have spoken on the telephone several times.
Hi, Judith.
Do you ever turn the noise down? Because I'm at 10th and Detroit, and it's noisy. Regardless of the sound wall, it's noisy.
Yeah, so we do have part of our noise variance that we obtained from the city with those sound walls is trying to help keep some of that noise down. But yes, there is going to be some noise. Noise will kind of fluctuate, but we do have a decibel limit that we cannot go over as part of our noise variance. And we do have some sound equipment out there that's keeping track of that noise to make sure that we don't go over. But hopefully the sooner that we can get this drilled and done, the sooner the noise will go away. But there will be some noise during this project, especially, you know, with you living with your house right backed up to this.
A follow-up question. So Gianna, can you tell us, I assume you hire a subcontractor to do the drilling. Do any of the Denver Water employees actually go and inspect the site, as well as are on site to monitor that and make sure that they're staying within those limits?
Yep. The noise is something that I personally monitor every single day. We do have our project manager through Denver Water, our inspectors that are on site, knowing what's going on, inspecting what's going on. And then LRE Water is our contractor who is doing the actual ASR drilling with our drilling contractor, and there are boots on the ground 24/7. So we always have eyes, always have Denver Water employees on site managing the things that are going through with that.
So if this proves viable, will you be using these drill sites to pump water underground? Would you be setting up a pumping station here and pumping water in the future?
So that is something that we're looking into and why we're doing this study. That could be a possibility. That would be a couple years down the road from now. Not something that we're going to know for sure if we're going to be able to do that or not right now, but this would be an option if we find that that is feasible. And that would just include maybe a building or two, small, I would say 1-story building that would have a bunch of equipment inside the building that we would use for pumping. But that is pretty long-term out from us. So we're not really sure exactly what that would look like, but it is an option.
Okay, so because this is Denver Water's land, the neighborhood really wouldn't have any say in where you're locating this or any input in that matter?
I mean, I think it would be something that we definitely would want to discuss with you guys, especially coming to an R&O meeting like this, and make sure that you're involved in that process and know what's going on. We want to be transparent with you so to make sure that you guys know what's happening, the decisions that are made. So I think that's something we should definitely talk about in the future together. And obviously we'll keep very transparent with you. We will know more at the end of this study, what's going to happen. So I'm planning to keep a very open line of communication with you guys, with Vicki, especially with the R&O of what's going to be happening. And obviously we'll be sending out notices. There will be things posted on our website. So we want to make sure we keep you all in the loop about that.
Thank you.
Sure. And just for you guys too, if you have any other questions about ASR, my information has been on the notices, but my name, Gianna.Lombardi@denverwater.org is the best way to contact me through email. And I'll make sure that Vicki has that. So if you guys need it, if you didn't catch that, I'll make sure that she has it. But I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Meg so she can talk about the lead reduction program that's happening over in the Congress Park area.
Thanks, Gianna. And if you want to stop sharing your screen, I will go ahead and share my screen. But just hello to everybody. Thanks so much for allowing us to join your meeting tonight. My name is Meg Trubee. I am a public affairs manager for Denver Water. I focus on the communications, outreach, and education related to our lead reduction program. I feel like this community and the neighbors here in Congress Park are very well aware of our lead reduction program because we've been out doing construction in your neighborhood for several years now. The first thing I'd like to show you is a map of where our work areas are for next year for the lead reduction program. So what you're looking at is really a map of the city, the red line, the city council district boundaries that go with the numbers that you see on the map. And right at the heart of the map, you can see Congress Park. That lighter lavender color is the work that we've done for the lead reduction program that is, the majority of it is complete. There might be a few properties or a portion of a street that's not complete, but for the purposes of a visual depiction, the lavender color is complete. The darker color is where we're going to be in 2022. And I'm just going to try and zoom in here so that you can see that. So we're going to be in that northwest quadrant of Congress Park in 2022, really focusing on the lead service lines in that area. The lead reduction program is a lot of the work that is happening in Congress Park, but as you probably also know, it is not the only work that is happening in the Congress Park neighborhood. The other work that's happening there, now I'm gonna stop sharing this so that I can show you a different screen. The other work that's happening is part of our ongoing maintenance, right? Denver Water serves 1.5 million people. That equates to over 3,000 miles of water distribution main in the middle of streets throughout our service area. And we have to go through an analysis to make sure that we're keeping those water distribution mains in good shape. And there's lots of factors that go into determining how those get replaced, but we are replacing or continuing to replace some that are in the Congress Park neighborhood. So let me go to my next screen to show you that. Also has my notes on there. So for next year in Congress Park, we're going to be relocating an 1895 water main in coordination with the City of Denver's Park and Pool project. And you may scratch your head and say like, wow, Denver Water's using a water main that's from 1895? And the answer is yes. And we haven't had to replace it because it was in such good shape. So we are replacing that now because we can do it in coordination with that Park and Pool project. So what you can see down here in on this map, the blue lines are where the water mains are going to be replaced. Now, if there were lead service lines that connected to that water main, we will also replace those. So it is kind of part of our lead reduction program, but really the primary purpose is to get out here and to replace that water main in the street. So that's what's happening in 2022 in the Congress Park neighborhood. These main replacements that are slightly south of 6th Avenue, that is Cherry Creek, but given the proximity, I thought it would be good to share that information here too. And the last thing I'll mention before I open it up to questions is that I was looking at the Congress Park website and I noticed that we have old information related to our lead reduction program there about 2021. And so I'll work through Gianna to make sure, Victoria, you get that information and we can update your website with a map, with a link to our interactive map that we have new this year, that you can really zoom in to your block and find out what's happening, what type of work, the expected time frame, et cetera.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That would be great.
Great. Happy to do that. So that's kind of it. I am a fast talker. That was a lot of info, but I'd love to open it up to questions. And likewise, I'll make sure that Victoria has my contact information so you can get a hold of me too.
So quickly, Meg, looking at Congress Park, it looks like you're going to be replacing a water main within the park. So currently they're starting on the pool project and they're going to be working on the playground after that. And they're finalizing the plans. I thought they were going to start soon. So how are you coordinating with these other projects with the park?
Yeah, we have really close coordination with the city. you know, on all of our projects, and we've been working with them all along to move our infrastructure out of the way as part of their projects. So it was part of their project that we would do this work. And that's, you know, pretty standard for Denver Water and the city with projects. Now, Denver Water has to get permits for projects just like a developer would, but unlike a developer, we are walking lockstep with the city on our projects. And so we are involved very early on in that process. So that should have been on the design plans that you saw, and that that work may be starting for us here soon too.
So will your project actually mean the playground area will be closed because you'll be digging, it looks like right underneath the current playground?
I think that I don't think that the main is right under the playground. I see how it looks like that's true on the map. But we would not be doing any additional closures to the playground that were not part of the city's closure of that playground for the construction. We're following I'm sorry, Victoria. We're following their guidelines for their project and just doing our work as part of their project. So nothing different or no outliers for our work related to the city's project in that park.
Okay, I guess it would be, I guess we could find out from the city, because I don't know what their plans are, if they're planning on closing that whole area as they start the pool project, because they'll need a mobilization area and everything else. But okay, thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Thanks, Miles.
Hey, Meg,
Do we have any other?
Yeah,
Judith.
this is Judith again with the noise issue. Are you going to be doing all of your work on weekdays between 9 and 5? And I asked that question because we have had lead replacement work go on Saturday morning, and that's just not a good thing.
We have standard work hours that we are required to work for our permits, and any work that's done outside of that requires a special permit. So certainly, if something is happening outside of work hours, we'd like to know about that. Sometimes that does include weekends because they're trying to expedite the work. So that could have been one of those instances, but I would have to know a date in order to look into it.
And what are your standard hours?
I believe those are, well, let me actually send that information to Victoria, because I don't know off the top of my head what those standard work hours are, because they do vary. So I don't want to quote something and be incorrect. So I will follow up and provide that to Victoria.
Thank you.
Okay.
Of course.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Meg and Gianna. I bet we'll talk again over the next few weeks and months about the projects going on. And I will post the information that they get to me. So thank you so much for coming to our meeting.
Thank you so much. I know Denver Water's been in your neighborhood for a long time with a lot of activity. I just want to extend our appreciation for the patience and flexibility required by everybody in this community. We really appreciate it. So thank you for letting us join your meeting and for your continued patience with us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kim Morse, who, Kim, I'm going to let you introduce your topic because I think you would be more accurate than I would. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Morse. I am joined by my peers, Jeff Walker and Dr. Robert Davis, and we are just three of about 60 or so members of the task force, the Denver Task Force to Reimagining Policing and Public Safety. Perhaps you've heard about our work by reading the Denverite or in other publications, but we've been working hard since last summer to try and reimagine what public safety could look like in a city where every person who lived here or came through here had an opportunity to be safe and live a life where they thrived. And we came together after the George Floyd protests, or the George Floyd murder last year and the protest. Our work really got underway in September, where we brought together people from all walks of life, all across the city, different organizations, people of different race and ethnicities, business owners, elected officials, different religions. We really worked hard to try and be as intentionally inclusive as possible to get input into this effort. And so my peers and I wanted to talk with you about our work and invite you to join us this evening. What I want to mention before I introduce my peers to share our work, and I'm going to share my presentation here in just a second, is that not only did we, excuse me for while I'm bringing up my presentation. Okay, sorry about that. Not only do we bring together all these groups, but once we developed recommendations for the city, we actually put them through a rigorous process that students with Project Voice developed to determine if they would help heal our city and get us to the place we had imagined, or if it was something that would cause harm. And so what I would like to do is introduce my peer, Jeff Walker, to talk about how we are envisioning safety. Jeff, are you able to unmute? Okay, well, I'll get going. That's okay, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I apologize for that. My name is Jeff Walker. I live in Rosedale, which is south central Denver, just a little bit west of University of Denver. And my council rep, Paul Cashman, asked me to be a part of the task force. So what we're talking about when we ask what does safety look like, it's a very individualized response that we get to that. So what we've tried to move away from, what we were pretty intentional about, is that there's not a one-size-fits-all model for public safety. Different communities have different needs. They have different layouts and mores and social norms. So what we've done by gathering all these people is come up with a definition of that. And Kim just had that definition up on a. Yeah, that's it. So we created a definition of what this organization felt public safety is. And I'll read it to you quickly. It's public safety ensures that all members of the community decide how to organize a social environment that provides the freedom to live and thrive with the protection and support of social, physical, mental, and economic well-being. Safety is not a function of armed paramilitary forces with a proven track record of racism and violence. Public safety prevents, reduces, and heals harms. So what we came to understand, and what a lot of us believe going in, and some of us came to recognize and understand through the process, is that public safety isn't just cops and robbers. It's economic well-being, economic safety, food security, education, mental health, physical health. All of those things are what goes into making a populace, a community feel safe. I used to be on RTD's board. I was termed out at the end of December 2020. Just before my term ended, we started a process of reimagining our police force. So RTD has its own sworn officer police force. Now we contract a lot of those positions out. There are about 10, when I left, there were about 10 in-house officers. But what we found through discussions, studies that when we were looking inward, is that out of all of the contacts that we had with people on the buses, on the platforms, on the trains, et cetera, only a handful of those interactions seemed to need some kind of a use of force. So we had all these police officers out there and sworn officers and security officers out there with sidearms. And it's a tremendous expense to maintain that the training and the armor, the body armor protection to have people with sidearms, firearms on them, when we rarely needed those instances. So a few years ago, we contracted a mental health professional to ride along with some of the officers on certain calls. I was involved in one of those calls. I was on the bus that was the subject of a response. And the mental health officer came and interviewed me and a couple other passengers because one of the passengers on the bus had what seemed to be going through a crisis. I've talked to some officers or train ambassadors, a person riding on the N line who checks fares, who's unarmed now. Typically our commuter rails have armed personnel on them, armed staff. This one on the N line, we started the program there with unarmed officers. He felt that it was better for him to be unarmed because that sidearm put some passengers at ease. And if they were at ease, then he was it put them at unease, made them uneasy. And if they were uneasy, then he became uneasy. And that just escalated or could have led to an escalation of a situation that really didn't warrant. Most of the time it's just, take your feet off the seat, let me see your ticket, where's your ticket, here are the rules, move along, things like that. So that's the type of transformation that RTD was making. A lot of the recommendations that we have also go towards that, where the interaction doesn't have to be escalated by the presence of a sidearm. We know that somebody's going to have to help out with some situations. That could be a police officer, it could be somebody from the STAR program, whatever the name has, somebody's going to have to come in and help the people from the community. But that person who enters that scenario should be what the community, that specific community wants. So Hilltop's going to be different from Rosedale, where I live, and that's going to be different from Globeville. That's going to be different from Bear Valley. But the response and the officers, the personnel, the staff that respond to those calls should understand that community. That's probably best aided, greatly aided by the people who live there. But what we're trying to get to is a response that fits the community where the need is located. I hope that made sense. I talk pretty fast too. So with that, I'm sure we'll have time for questions. I hope we have time for questions after this, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Davis.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that we thought was very important was not just to develop recommendations, but rather to try to figure out what strategy do we need to employ to really improve public safety. And as a result, we identified 5 strategies that if you were to take these 5 strategies, you could use them anywhere in the nation. Any city in America could take these 5 strategies and improve their public safety, Los Angeles, New York, or Baltimore, wherever it may be. But the recommendations seek to explain how these 5 strategies would be implemented here in the city of Denver. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at the 112 recommendations. How do we make those strategies a reality? And so pretty soon we're going to have an ask of you. But before we do, I just want to go over those 5 strategies very quickly. And what I want you to think about is how our communities would look if we were to implement these strategies. Because the very first question is, do you in fact agree with our strategic approach? We can disagree on the 112 recommendations, but at least do you agree with the strategies? Now here they are. Number 1, empower the community with resources to adequately address socioeconomic needs and provide for their own public safety. Number 2, to minimize unnecessary interaction of law enforcement and the criminal legal system with the community. Number 3, support successful community reentry of formerly incarcerated people and remove systemic barriers of reintegration. Number 4, heal the community from harm created by policing and the criminal legal system. And number 5, expand the role of community in establishing meaningful independent oversight, improving accountability, training law enforcement, and creating public safety policy. And I just want to talk about number 2 for just a second. I'm from Washington, D.C., Southeast Washington, D.C., born and raised. That's the other side of the bridge that people only used to talk about on the evening news. I came along in the late 80s and 90s during the crack epidemic. And I never, from the time that I was a child, I mean, I'm trying to think back, but I remember the first time I had an officer to put a gun to my head for committing the crime of walking home from school. That was the crime I committed. I was walking home from school, and the police officer put a gun to my head, made me put my hands up on the car, and a white police officer referred to me as the N-word. And every other interaction I had with police from that time forward was just hostile. They were just angry that I existed, and not just me, but everyone in our community. They were angry that we existed. They were angry that our communities were poor, that our communities had crime, especially survival crimes. You know, it just was what it was. And so that means a lot to me, number two. If we can minimize the unnecessary interaction between law enforcement and the community, that really goes a long, long way. And the key word is unnecessary. Unnecessary. We recognize that there are times. We do recognize that, you know, for an 80-year-old woman in her home, when she hears somebody jingling at her window, she needs an armed response. You know, we don't need somebody with balloons showing up saying happy birthday. We need somebody who can actually protect and defend her. But that's one extreme. The other extreme is, like I said, me walking home from school with a backpack on and being thrown on the hood of the police car, called the N-word by a white officer, and having all of my possessions searched as if I was, you know, an animal. And it still makes me emotional when I talk about it to this day. And I just had so many other interactions like that. So that's our strategies, and that's how we believe that we can really help communities. Those 5 strategies can really help communities to become more safe. Thank you.
Thank you. So what's next? We submitted these 112 recommendations to the mayor's office, to the Department of Safety, to Denver Police, to City Council back in May. And we've been working with each of these groups, and I should also mention our Denver DA, on how we go about getting them implemented. I don't know that you've all had a chance to look at the recommendations yet. I had shared them with Vicki when we first made these arrangements, and I'll make sure that you have information on where to find them. I'll drop it in the chat in a moment. But I'd encourage you to look through them. And if you agree with these recommendations, reach out to your council person or Director Robinson and encourage them to implement them. If you think that we're missing something or would like to add some additional feedback, we would love to hear from you. Like I said at the beginning, we've intentionally tried to include so many different voices and people from across the community. And we know in a city of several 100,000 that it's possible we missed some voices, and we didn't obviously talk to everybody. One of the things that you can do is, on the current ballot, support the recommendation to give the Office of the Independent Monitor some true independence. Currently, the Office of the Independent Monitor's charge is to oversee and investigate police and sheriff misconduct. The OIM and the police both report to the mayor. By giving the OIM some independence, they can do their job more holistically, more thoroughly, and more transparently. You can check out our Facebook page for some events, and there are other things that you can do. I know Congress Park is a pretty active neighborhood, and safety starts at home. Getting to know your neighbors and who's in the area, and having events where neighbors can talk with each other and get to know each other and call somebody and say, hey, could you turn down your music instead of calling the police, for example, you know, is a great way to start making people feel safe at home. And also, one of our peers couldn't join us tonight, but her organization does a lot of training on conflict management and de-escalation. And maybe that's something also that you could hold a class in your neighborhood on, if that were of interest, just to help with, again, starting to make people feel safe at home and, you know, reducing the need for police to come and respond to things that aren't necessarily violent or dangerous or necessarily need somebody with a sidearm. I know you've got a full agenda, so if there's a quick question or two, we're happy to answer it. If not, we're happy to schedule some additional time, or I'll drop my email address in the chat and you can reach out to me there as well. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Thank you.
I was just trying to check out the website, and it looks like the Facebook, the content isn't available now. Do you know when it will be working again?
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I will double check with our social media team member, and I will get back to Vicki.
I just went to it, Kim, and it seems to be working on my end. So I'm not 100% sure what it should be. Facebook.com/Denver Task Force. Is that what was on the slide? Denver Task Force?
Yeah.
And the website is denvertaskforce.org. And that also has links to the Facebook page as well. Denver Task Force. And I already dropped it in the chat, and I'll drop it again.
And I included my email address in case you would like to ask questions offline or as you think about it, you know, after reviewing the recommendations.
I just have a couple. Hey, I just have a couple of comments. One is anytime we can support additional oversight over the mayor's office is a good thing. We have a strong mayoral system that favors certain people over other people. And every time that we can have another accountability and we have additional transparency, that is a win for the people. And we are a neighborhood actually that has had a particular individual that has gone around and done things to escalate community conflict by calling regulatory authorities on different neighbors. So we welcome the opportunity to mediate, discuss, and resolve things at the lowest level, because we know the other is not a good strategy. So I am all for additional oversight, because we have seen that when we don't have that, we have payout after payout by the city council for harm done that could have easily been mitigated had the initial recommendations by the Office of Independent Monitor had been implemented. We just sort of lack that ability to hold our electeds accountable. So I applaud your efforts and anything I can do to support.
Yeah, I'm often surprised at how much our cities are paying out every year, and not just Denver, all over the country, how much we're paying out in millions upon millions of dollars for abuses and misconduct that could be avoided. And, you know, we've almost got to the place where we say, you know, we're willing to accept this, you know, without even punishing the officers who are putting us in that position. You know, one of the ways when you talk about there's just a few bad apples, the first thing you have to do is take those bad apples out. And if you leave the bad apples in the barrel, then guess what? All the apples end up getting spoiled. The only way that analogy works is if you're willing to take out the bad apples who are costing the city millions upon millions of dollars in lawsuits.
And I'll just add, from having run an organization that was to help victims of crime, we often had DPD arrest the victim because they couldn't understand a restraining order. And so they would arrest the victim on her own restraining order with my staff present. And we would see these things happen and I'd be told, oh, it's just a training issue. We'll get it right next time. That was so traumatic. They put a woman in jail who was nursing her infant child. Now we're lucky nobody was, you know, killed, but I have seen it happen enough times to know it's beyond a training issue. We've had that. My agency went out and trained DPD. So we've done that, been there, done that. Not training isn't going to solve everything. We've got to have additional tools in our toolkit to help enhance compliance, best practices, making sure that our police have everything that they need to be successful. so they can protect themselves as well. I mean, it's a two-way street too. And what are we missing by continuing down the road that we're going? So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth from my days of being on the other side and trying to help victims of crime.
Well, thank you for the support, and thank you for your plug for 2G. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
And so do my peers. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, all of you, for your presentation. That was really helpful. And Kim, I'll make sure I repost all of your information and your recommendations.
I've got a quick question. Yeah, I got the website. Thank you. I went to the .org. I have access to everything now. But I've got a question too, and it seems like this has been happening across the nation. It seems the police officers, and I don't know, I assume it would get down to training, are treating residents or anytime they're called like everyone's a terrorist, and they're using overwhelming force because it's by default they're going to be attacked or killed. Is that systemic in all the police training because they take down old women? It's incredible what we're seeing. So all I can think of is they've had training in different types of tactics, and they're being trained like paramilitary troops. Do you see the same thing?
Yes, and they are paramilitary troops, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say, I talked to a friend of mine. He's a sworn officer. He's got a few years on me, and and he's been in that business for a long time. And he said that he's seen the same thing, and that a lot of the younger folks that are coming in, and even some of the middle-aged ones, they don't have the communication skills to talk their way out of or to de-escalate a situation. And a lot of them do come out of the military where it's us versus them. So some of the newer recruits, folks in the police academy, coming out of the police academy over the last few years, see it as an us versus them scenario. Some of the older ones, this guy, he never had to he never fired his gun. I think he drew it once. And another friend of mine who was a cop years ago said he only pulled his gun once out of the 10 or 12 years that he was on, but he never had to fire it because he was able to talk his way out of a situation. Quick story, I have a friend who's a nurse. I was talking to her about this. She's like, cops should be trained like nurses, because nurses are trained to deal with all kinds of mental states with people in crisis, and cops should be done the same way. It shouldn't be a 6-week or 8-week training period. It should be a years-long training period. So training is part of the problem. Job opportunities for other folks, ego, tons of reasons why it is like it is. But we've talked to probably 10, 12 organizations already. We hear the same comments in all of them. Different socioeconomic statuses of the neighborhoods, of the organizations, different representations, but we all hear what we have now is a lot of stressed out cops because they get called for everything more than what they need to handle, and they're not equipped or trained to handle all of those situations. And if they're not, then the neighbors who live around need to be trained, and they need to be supported so they can be trained properly.
And I say it again, when you develop a culture by what you permit. Edwin Friedman says that, too often our society and too often organizations organize themselves to accommodate the most immature. And so if you deal with those handful of officers who are quick on the draw, who are all about, show of force, if you deal with them, then you establish a culture that says we have to think our way out of it. But again, when you let the little boy at school, even though it's only one boy, pull the little girl's hair, punch people and stuff, it becomes, unfortunately, an epidemic throughout the school. So you have to deal with it. That's one of the things that we really have to address. How do we deal with those officers who are over the top? And, they pay their union dues. So the union says, well, you paid your dues. We believe that it's our responsibility to protect you at all costs, more or less. And how do we as a community say, you know what? We want to protect the 1,200 officers who are trying to do a decent job from the 25 officers who, got a chip on their shoulder and are out here to, one things that do happen, I'll stop on this. One of the good things is most of the time, the trigger happy, quote unquote, hostile officers, they don't get moved up the ranks. So they never become chief of police or commander or any of those things. That's the good thing that happens. The bad thing that happens is they actually stay out on the street. They actually stay out on the streets because they never do get promoted. They never do end up in the top brass. So we as a society have to figure out, how do we deal with those bad apples, because if you don't deal with them, it ends up spoiling the entire batch.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up real quickly. The other minor issue we're having is we've heard quite a bit of people will call the police, but they don't ever show up. So it's more minor things, but so you've got these two extremes. So it's an issue that needs to be resolved, and different resources for different purposes would help solve a lot of problems. So I look forward to reading your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hey, Miles, I think that's a 911 issue. And again, that gets back to the city. The city prioritizes those phone calls, and they determine what information the police officers, the responding officers, are given. And there have been cases where they have failed to give important information to the responding officers on both sides, that the person was a child, or the Tamir Rice case, the person that called in said it was a child, and the responding officer showed up, said he wasn't aware. So we have to be sure that 911 operators are trained appropriately, and that there are reviews when things go wrong, because we don't want to send in people who aren't aware of what's going on the ground. And certainly, I think that the police officers and the 911 operators need to be better trained. I personally, we've had situations where they have said we won't show up, even though there's 3 felonies going on. And we're kind of like, okay, well then, that's the situation that we're going to deal with. But that to me is a separate issue, because that falls under safety, but it's not necessarily policing, controlling all of that information.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We were going to move on to our ballot issues tonight. Is Maddie Butler here, or someone that is representing RISE?
Hi, I'm Sheila MacDonald. Let me turn on my video. There you go. Hi. I'm representing RISE. How are you?
Good, good. Okay, so Sheila is going to speak with us about 2A through E. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
I am. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk tonight. I actually grew up in Congress Park and lived there for the first 18 years of my life. So it's a great community. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about 2A through 2E. It's the bond package that is on the ballot this November. And it addresses a number of things across the city, and it's going to impact a lot of neighborhoods across the city. So just sort of overall, the entire bond package has a $1.04 billion economic impact. It'll create 7,500 plus jobs and 460 plus million in wages for workers. And so the issues are diverse, and I'm just going to briefly go through them. So 2A is really about Denver's facilities, including the cultural institutions, libraries, and in upgrading city buildings to meet accessibility standards for ADA. It will construct 2 libraries, one in Gloveville and Westwood, one in Westwood, and then it will expand the Hampton Branch Library in Southern Denver. It'll also bring improvements to the Denver Zoo, the Denver Botanic Gardens, Bomfe's Theater Complex, and the Museum of Nature and Science. So 2A covers a wide variety of things that are across the city. 2B really impacts housing and shelter for the homeless. Obviously, we've seen an increase in homelessness across the city. The past year, I think it's been more pronounced, but certainly over the past several years, we've seen homelessness increase, and 2B will increase shelter space and non-congregate living spaces to help keep people off the streets. It'll fund the purchase of the 48th Avenue shelter and keep it as a 24/7 operational shelter. And it'll dedicate funds for the purchase and conversion of up to 300 hotel rooms in Denver to function as shelters. So 2B is pretty important for the homeless population. 2C is about transportation and safety improvements for pedestrians and cyclists across the city. It will build out Denver's bicycle infrastructure, and it'll construct the loop for the 5280 loop. It'll finish the construction for the 5280 loop. It addresses sidewalk construction. I think we've been talking about Vision Zero for several years now to eliminate all traffic fatalities. And so that's really what 2C is focused on, is addressing sidewalk construction, pedestrian transportation safety throughout the city. Denver currently has 300 miles of sidewalk gaps that 2C will address with an emphasis on underserved communities. So 2C is really about transportation across the city. 2D is about parks and recreation. 2D will construct new parks at University Hills and 47th and Walden. It will rebuild the Curtis Park Pool. Mestizo Curtis Pool is the actual official name. We call it the Curtis Park Pool in our family, but it's the oldest pool in the Denver park system, and it serves thousands of children and families in the 5 Points area. So that's going to get much needed repairs. And then playgrounds will be replaced in Harvey Park, Hudson Lake Park, Daly Park, and Crestmore Park across the city, focused on creating playgrounds that are diverse and accessible for children with disabilities. Basketball courts, tennis courts, and baseball fields at 12 parks around Denver. And then the renovation of the Sloan's Lake Boathouse is part of 2D. So, excuse me, 2E is the fifth bond measure, and that's probably the one that most people are talking about. And 2E is about the National Western campus facilities, specifically building a new arena and transforming the historic 1909 building to a public market and renovating that. And so that is, that's really the biggest issue. I think just sort of a little history on that. CSU, the Museum of Nature and Science, the Colorado History Museum started meeting years ago regarding the campus and creating a master plan. Citizens from the neighborhood were also included in that to create a master plan for the Denver National Western campus out there. And if you haven't been out there, you actually should take a tour of it. It's pretty amazing. CSU has 3 buildings up now. It's really going to become a global destination to study water and human and animal behavior. It's pretty amazing, their vision out there. But 2E specifically addresses building a new arena. The Coliseum, if any of you have been in it recently, has deteriorated significantly, and a new arena is needed. Now, there's some debate, I think, whether or not we need a new arena, but I think the consensus is that it'll be used year round, and it'll be a revenue generator for the National Western campus, which is important. And then the transforming a 1909 building, you probably have been in that building. It's a great piece of architecture. And they're talking about transforming that into a public market, which will bring fresh food to the area. You know, I was at a neighborhood meeting last night, and somebody from the opposition was there and said that they'd only sell pre-made foods, but I investigated that today, and the goal is to make it a public market that's a farmer's market with affordable food. So that's the goal, to create that for that community. This is being done without a tax increase. It's going to have a pretty large economic impact on the surrounding community and on the city. And it's going to complete the master plan for the National Western. So with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. And
let's hold off on questions for a minute. Christine O'Connor is here, and she is also going to present on the issues. And then afterwards, we'll take questions for both of you. So thank you. Hi, Christine. Go ahead and talk with us.
Thank you for hosting this tonight. It's really an important issue. Before I would like to share my screen, but before I start, I just want everybody to hold one thing that the representative for RISE Denver said. You know, they went through a whole list of what we're going to get, libraries, museum enhancements from A to B to C and to D. Every single one of those items was advanced by your council members or as a result of surveys by the city of you, me, and other residents. It was responsive to what the citizens wanted, not 2E. No council district member asked for this. No resident said, let's build an arena. As a matter of fact, they said, let's do housing and let's not build something shiny and new. Only 10% said it's okay to build something new. Okay, but now let me share my screen if I can, and then I'll start. Okay, can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Eek. Share. Okay, how's that? Better?
Good.
Great. Okay, so there's a couple of really big reasons that you should vote no on 2E. And I'm going to go through it. But the first thing is, honestly, it's financially not a great idea for us to be investing in a tourism project when our tourism revenues have hit bottom and are unlikely to rebound very quickly. The second reason is this whole process that's been going on at National Western is socially unjust. Who we are, we don't have any paid campaign people. We're a grassroots campaign with a few of us who are working every day out with literature, trying to get the press to cover us. And we're campaigning against irresponsible development in the heart of Denver, development that's not timely. It's really kind of tone deaf at this point in history, with people not able to stay in housing, not able to get good jobs, to advance another shiny arena. And we have Denver residents from throughout the city, and we were created because of concern for not only the immediate Globeville, Elyria, Swansea area, although they are the ones who sort of raised this issue, but through my neighborhood, your neighborhood, people who are thinking about, is this really good for our city? So why should you vote no? First of all, it's economically unsound. There are several studies out there, 3 that I know of, and there's probably more that I don't know about, that have said neither the arena, a new arena or stadium, or a market are really called for. The one study on the public market, the feasibility study, says it probably won't succeed because we don't have the population density to make it thrive and be a successful income generator. On the arena, one of the studies said, you know, it's too small for top acts, too big for the majority of the smaller acts. And another study that I found by doing a Cora request, I don't think you'll find this online, basically said, due to the relatively high inventory of stadiums and arenas in the market, Denver is below the median comparable market average in demographic areas for making this successful. So it's not something that we really need. There's too many other venues that fill that void. So the second reason, we already paid for this. I think you remember the mayor standing there saying, we need to save the stock show, keep it from moving to Aurora. This is back in 2000. Well, he said it in 2011, but in 2015, he said, you guys have to give me $778 million in a bonding issue that was called a smart deal for Denver. Do you remember that? And well, it wasn't an overwhelming vote. I think 65% of the city said, okay, let's keep the stock show. Here you go. Here's the money. That was a revenue bond. It was not a general obligation bond. This is really important. That bond was going to be paid back by revenues from tourism, the rent, the lodging tax, which was extended, the car tax, which was extended, the rental tax. The mayor said, this is a tourism venue I'm building up here, this 270 acres. Will pay for it with a tourism tax. So we did that. Third, we have more pressing needs, and this is probably the most important thing. When the city asked people, where do you want bond money to go if we could do a bond in 2021? Where should it go? Over 40% of you said for housing and to end homelessness. Those were overwhelming priorities. People also wanted to spend some on infrastructure, but they wanted to spend it on existing infrastructure, fix those street corners, get those sidewalks in, get the pipes fixed, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't, as I said before, only 10% thought it would be okay to spend it on shiny new projects. So we kind of set aside what city council said, we set aside what residents said, and we chose this bond issue to bail out a flailing National Western Center. Now, I heard Sheila say the CSU is doing a great job. I agree. They've got a lot of research, they've got a lot of education, but guess what? They're not going to be generating the revenues. The stock show goes for 16 days. It's not going to be generating the revenues. And Sheila said that there's going to be this economic output, but I've asked for proof. How do you know you're going to get $230 million a year when this thing is done? And Evan Dreyer said he'll have to get back to me. So we don't really know. We're just sort of going on what I call puffing. You know, just building it up as this great economic engine. So here's just one page from the survey. You can see it. What supports matter most to you? Look at the housing and homelessness supports. Okay, anybody find anything about new venues, cultural facilities? Okay, so let me continue. And then I have lots more that I probably won't get to say, but you can ask in questions. The fourth reason that you should vote no is that development has minimum benefits for local communities. Now, I do understand that Brendan Hanlon and Debbie Ortega think that this is going to bring a ton of jobs to the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea community. But to be frank, I heard Doty speak to council, and he talked about, the guy from Doty talked about, all the design jobs and the project manager jobs and sort of the high design build jobs that aren't really going to trickle down. So this trickle down jobs is really questionable. We know that there are minimum wage jobs. The stock show can't even find enough people to do the jobs that they need done for January. It's a really tough market. Another reason is the food access. Sheila said that it's going to be a farmer's market. We don't know what it's going to be. I've seen people talk about, we'll have some, what do you call it, incubators, entrepreneurs who can go out and create a little market in this big 1909 market. That might be great, but what do the people who live in that neighborhood need? Take a guess. Supermarkets. The local community opposes the plan. I'm sure you saw the editorial written by Alfonso Espino from Globeville, talking about what the community really needs and wants. You can look it up in the Denver Post. I won't go through it here, but suffice it to say that the community isn't really behind this. The people I know who've been out campaigning in that area have heard that they're just tired of the promises that they've heard from the mayor that this big 270-acre project is going to benefit their community. This is important. Our own city council members raised serious concerns about this, about all the bond issues, but I'm only going to focus on 2E. Robin Kanish talked about the fact that the National Western Center hadn't done its homework, hadn't looked for other funding. Remember, there was going to be a public-private partnership. It fell apart. Well, as soon as it fell apart, they went to the mayor and said, let's do a bond. And she basically called them out, and she voted against putting this on the ballot. She said, you haven't done your homework. You didn't go try to raise funds from elsewhere. The second thing is that the framework agreement gives the city until 2027 to come up with ways to do funding for anything else. There's 4 other elements that have to be developed. There's the expo hall, which isn't even covered in this bond. There's the parking structure, which isn't even covered in this bond. And then the arena and the market. We have till 2027 to do that. This was rushed and it should not have been on the ballot. The reliance on property taxes. As I said in the beginning, you were all sold on this in 2015 because it wasn't going to touch your purses. It was going to be based on visitors coming in, revenues from car rentals, revenues from hotels. And I agree that's dropped off. That's more reason not to proceed with this now. It's bad timing. The timing's off. The exclusion of the local community and development plans. I know plenty about this, but since 2014 and 15, the community has been brought into planning, and it's been more crumbs than anything else. For example, they did a nice sidewalk on 40th Avenue in Swansea. If you go over there, the infrastructure isn't even ready. They're way, way behind. And every benefit that is going to go to GES is probably going to be incidental. So bottom line is we should be investing in recovery, not the rodeo. This really isn't about recovery. And the city realized that as soon as they started this campaign, they immediately dropped the recovery. They realized, people aren't going to buy this. This isn't what they're looking for in a recovery. So we have the time to do it right. We should just vote this down, go back to the drawing table, maybe redo the National Western Plan so that it includes the community and has an equitable development process, maybe redo the framework agreement if we have to. Those things can happen. There's nothing written in stone that says we have to do this right now. So let me just see if I missed any of my other notes. Oh, the thing about raising taxes, I heard Brendan Hanlon, and when he was asked, he admitted this could raise taxes. And the language, I'd like you to go all read the really long paragraph in the ballot where it says that if we vote for 2E, we're voting to authorize the city to increase ad valorem taxes for both principal and interest on this bond. And by the way, by the time we pay it off, it'll be $350 million because the interest is so extreme. And then the bond itself is very vague, but I'm pretty sure nobody reads this. It says the proceeds will go for repair and improvements to the system, the National Western system, and may include the arena and the 1909 building, and are not limited to the arena and the 1909 building. So you're basically signing a blank check if you vote for 2E and giving the city another $190 million to give to the National Western Authority. And we have no really good idea of where that's going to go. The last thing I want to say is it was only this past April of 2021, that the city finished issuing the 2C bond money. April, was that 5 months ago, 6 months ago? And we can't get an accounting of where that money has gone, how much is left. Where's that going to go? We have no way to get an accounting. And believe me, I've done core requests to get it. So it's just not really ready for prime time. So thank you. And I'd be glad to take questions too.
Thank you, Christine and Sheila both. Christine, can you remind us who you're representing? Is it Vote No on 2E? Is that the name of your?
Yeah, it's noarenabond.com is the website.
Okay.
And we'd love, we don't have money. We don't have 3 or 4 different paid consultants working on this. So we'd love money, and we still need help getting out flyers. We've gotten out quite a bit, but we'd love some more help.
Okay, we'll take questions for either Sheila or Chris.
I've got a quick question. I don't know if Sheila can answer it, but in the past, I thought it was, they had a period of time before they issued GO bonds or general obligation bonds. And it seems we just passed one a few years ago, yet you're asking for more money now. Is this something that we're going to be seeing from the city, that every few years they're going to be asking for another $1 billion in bonds? Do you know?
That's actually a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't actually work for the city, so I don't know the answer to that. I think they use the GO bonds to pay for projects and to jumpstart projects, and so you will see them in the future. I just don't know. I don't know how often or when.
Did they give you any reasoning why they were releasing this group of packages at this moment? This current RISE bond? Why now and at this time?
I think it's part of jumpstarting the economy after the pandemic. And as Christine says, I think a lot of this is a long time. And a lot of these things are needed. And I think all of them are needed. I mean, obviously, we can disagree on some, but I think that they're doing things that the community needs across the city. And so, that's why this package.
Can I jump in on that, Miles? Because I did watch, it was at the council meeting, and Councilman Cashman really drilled down on your question. He said, wait a minute. To Laura Perry, she said, oh, every 9 or 10 years we pass general obligation bonds. And he said, well, wait a minute. The last one was 2017. That's 4 years. Why are we even having another bonding at this time? And she basically, it was really interesting to watch. They hedged and hawed and said, well, you know, it's kind of a good time. We think we want to take the money we're going to get from the recovery funds and give a boost. It was very interesting. But the thing you need to know about the 2017 Elevate Denver obligation bonds is only 31% of that money has been expended. Out of the 434 projects in that bond, they've only completed 108. We are not done with that bond. What the hell are we doing with 5 new ones?
I think, to be fair though, Chris, on that one, you know, we just are coming out of 18 months of COVID. And so some projects didn't get started or haven't been finished yet. And so that money's been allocated. It maybe hasn't been spent yet, but those projects have been identified and that money's been allocated. And yeah, are they behind? They are. But I think that's due to other circumstances.
Yeah. So Brendan Hanlon basically tried to say that they're doing this to jumpstart the economy. But when I've asked how many, you know, when you try to put it together with all the recovery monies, it's a very jumbled answer. And it looks like even the National Western, Sheila, is going to get some recovery monies. But I can't obtain the information on how much.
And
I'll try to get that for you.
And just quickly, Sheila, I went to a past meeting where they were talking about the redevelopment of National Western. They were going to basically give the developer the east side of the property to develop the west side of the property. Can you tell me why that never came to fulfillment? Because that was the idea, that the taxpayers wouldn't have to pay anything and the developer was just going to be able to build whatever they wanted to make their profit. This almost tells me there was something not viable in that agreement because the developers never took up that option to develop the property.
You know what, Miles, I'm happy to find that out. I actually don't know exactly what it is you're talking about, but I'm happy to get that information and send it back to your the organizer of this meeting and get it out to everybody. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, yeah, it was a PPP plan. So Christine talked a little bit.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
I can jump in. I can tell you what they say. They say that it just fell apart because of COVID. But like you, I have questions about that.
Well, I'm happy to get the answers for you.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have the answers now. You know, the land is contaminated. It needs a lot of remediation, needs a lot of infrastructure. It may just not have been as good as it looked. We really don't know.
But we don't know. We don't know.
No, and it's not in the minutes, and you won't be able to find out.
Well, I'm going to try for you.
Well, thank you, Sheila and Chris, both of you, for presenting on these upcoming issues we'll be voting on. I have just a couple of announcements before the end of our meeting. We are going to be releasing a survey for the neighborhood about how you're dealing with the current trash situation change. So be looking for that on our website, and we would appreciate it a lot if you would take it and give us your feedback. In December, we're going to have our annual meeting and our election. And I am hoping to include Art Mejia from Doty in that meeting so we can speak with him directly about our concerns and how his trash plan is working out. And that meeting will be on December 15th. So look for that. And that's all I have for tonight. Does anyone else have any issues they want to raise? All right, thank you. This meeting was recorded. It'll be available on our website soon. So if you'd like to look at parts of it again, it'll be there. And thank you everyone for taking the time to come and join us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.